I was sitting in a hospital waiting room when my phone buzzed for the 47th time that day. The same number. The same person. My mother. I stared at the screen, watching it light up and go dark, light up and go dark. My fiancé squeezed my hand and whispered, "You don't have to answer." But I knew if I didn't, she'd find another way. She always did. When I finally picked up, her voice was frantic, broken, desperate. "Please," she said. "I need you. I have no one else." I closed my eyes and felt something cold settle in my chest. Because the last time I'd needed her, the last time I'd said those exact words, I was 17 years old, standing in our kitchen with a social worker, and she'd looked me in the eye and said, "I can't do this anymore." Let me be clear about what that meant. She didn't just leave. She didn't just walk away from a bad situation or a difficult marriage. She looked at me, her only daughter, 2 months before my high school graduation, and told me I was on my own. Not because she was dying. Not because she was incapacitated. Because her new boyfriend didn't want kids around. Because I was too much responsibility. Because she wanted to start fresh. I wasn't a troubled kid. I had a part-time job at a bookstore. I was getting A's and B's. I did my own laundry. I made dinner half the time because she worked late or said she did. I thought we were a team. I thought we were getting through it together after my dad died, when I was 14. Turns out I was the only one on the team. The day she left, she'd already cleared out her closet. She'd already packed her bathroom stuff, her jewelry, the photo albums. She left me $1,700 in an envelope on the counter, a note that said, "I'm sorry," and the rent paid through the end of the month. Then she got in a car with a man I'd met twice and drove 6 hours south to a city I'd never been to. I called her that night, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She didn't answer. I called the next day. No answer. I sent texts. I sent emails. I left voicemails that started with me begging and ended with me screaming. Nothing. My best friend's mom let me sleep on their couch for 3 weeks while I figured things out. I filed for emancipation with the help of a school counselor. I kept working at the bookstore, picked up shifts at a diner on weekends, and finished high school living in a basement apartment that smelled like mildew and regret. I ate pasta and eggs for 8 months straight. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I didn't. But I graduated. I walked across that stage in a borrowed dress, and I smiled for the camera, and I pretended the empty seat in the audience didn't destroy me. She sent a card 2 weeks later. It had a generic "Congratulations, graduate" message printed inside, and a $50 bill. No apology. No phone number. No return address. Just her first name signed at the bottom like we were acquaintances. I didn't hear from her again for 4 years. By then, I was 21, working full-time as a paralegal, and taking night classes at community college. I had my own apartment, my own car, my own life. I'd stopped expecting anything from her. I'd stopped checking my phone hoping she'd call. I'd stopped imagining the conversation where she'd apologize and explain and tell me it was all a horrible mistake. Then she found me on Facebook. The message was casual. Breezy. Like we'd just lost touch. Like she'd been busy. Like the last 4 years were a minor gap in communication. "Hey, sweetie. I've been thinking about you so much. I'm living in Arizona now. Things are really good. I'd love to reconnect. Miss you." I stared at that message for 2 hours. I wrote and deleted a response 17 times. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to ask her how she could do that to me. I wanted to demand an apology, an explanation, a reason. But instead, I wrote back, "Okay." Because some part of me, some stupid, hopeful, childish part of me, still wanted a mom. We talked on the phone a week later. She cried. She said she'd been in a bad place, that she'd made terrible decisions, that she regretted everything. She said the boyfriend was gone, that she'd been in therapy, that she'd changed. She said she wanted to make things right. And I believed her. Or I wanted to believe her. Maybe there's no difference. We started slow. Texts every few days. A phone call on my birthday. She sent me a Christmas gift that year, a necklace with a little silver heart. I wore it every day for 6 months. I thought we were healing. I thought we were rebuilding. Then she asked me for money. It started small. $100 for a car repair. $200 for a dentist bill. I sent it because I thought that's what family did. I thought I was being a good daughter. She always paid me back, or she said she would, or she'd send $50 and promise the rest was coming. Then her requests got bigger. $500 for rent because she'd lost her job. $1,000 because she needed a deposit on a new place. $1,500 because she'd gotten into a car accident and insurance wouldn't cover it. I was 23 years old, drowning in student loans, working 50 hours a week, and I kept saying yes because she was my mom. Because she said she needed me. Because I wanted to prove I wasn't the kind of person who abandoned family. I didn't realize I was being conditioned. I didn't realize every time I sent money, every time I said yes, I was teaching her that I was still that 17-year-old girl desperate for her mother's approval. I didn't realize I was the one being abandoned over and over again, just in slower, quieter ways. When I was 25, I met Daniel. He was kind and steady, and he didn't understand why I kept sending money to a woman who'd left me when I was still a child. "She's your mom," he'd say carefully, "but she's not acting like one." I'd get defensive. I'd tell him he didn't understand. I'd send the money anyway. But he planted a seed. And once it was there, I couldn't ignore it. I started keeping track. I made a spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd sent her since we'd reconnected. For years. $22,000. I sat on my bedroom floor staring at that number and felt something inside me crack open. $22,000 while I drove a car that barely started, while I ate ramen and skipped meals to save money, while I put off going to the dentist because I couldn't afford the copay. I called her that night. I told her I couldn't help anymore. I told her I needed to focus on my own bills, my own life.
She cried.
She told me I was all she had. She told me she'd end up on the street. She told me I was being selfish, that family takes care of each other, that she'd been there for me my whole childhood. I almost crumbled. Almost. But then I remembered standing in that kitchen at 17, remembered the envelope with $1,700 like that could replace a mother, and I said, no. She hung up on me, didn't call back, didn't text. For 6 months, silence. And it hurt, but it also felt like relief. Like I could finally breathe. Then she came back. It was my 27th birthday. She sent a long, rambling email about how sorry she was, how she'd been going to more therapy, how she understood she'd taken advantage of me, how she wanted a real relationship with no money involved. She said she had a job now, a good one, and she was stable. She said she just wanted to be my mom again. Daniel said, "Be careful." I said, "I will." I wasn't. We started talking again. And for a while it was different. She didn't ask for money. She asked about my life, my job, my relationship. She sent me articles she thought I'd like. She remembered things I told her. I started to think maybe she really had changed. Maybe people could actually grow. I should have known better. When I got engaged to Daniel, she cried happy tears on the phone. She said she was so proud of me, that she couldn't wait to be part of the wedding, that she wanted to help in any way she could. I was 29 years old, and I finally felt like I had a mother who cared. 3 months later, she called and told me she'd been evicted. She needed a place to stay, just temporarily, while she got back on her feet. She promised it would only be a few weeks, a month at most. She said she had job interviews lined up, that she just needed a little help. Daniel and I had a tiny one-bedroom apartment. We were saving for the wedding, trying to build a life. But she was my mom, and she said she had nowhere else to go. So I said yes. She moved in on a Tuesday. By Friday, I knew I'd made a mistake. She took over our living room, our bathroom, our kitchen. She didn't clean up after herself. She stayed up late watching TV at full volume. She ate the groceries we'd bought for the week and got annoyed when I mentioned it. She didn't go to job interviews. She spent her days on the couch scrolling through her phone, smoking cigarettes on our balcony even though we'd asked her not to, leaving her mess everywhere. When I tried to talk to her about it, she cried. She said I was being cruel, that she was going through a hard time, that she couldn't believe her own daughter would treat her this way. She said she'd raised me better than that. I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind her that she hadn't raised me at all, not when it mattered, not when I was 17 and terrified and alone. But I didn't. I swallowed it. I apologized. I told myself it would get better. It got worse. She started commenting on everything. My clothes were too tight. I was gaining weight. I spent too much money on the wedding. Daniel wasn't good enough for me. I should be saving more, doing more, being more. She criticized the way I cooked, the way I cleaned, the way I lived my life. And every time I pushed back, even gently, she'd collapse into tears and remind me that she had nothing, that I was all she had, that I was being heartless. Daniel started staying late at work. I didn't blame him. I wanted to escape too. One night, 2 months into her temporary stay, I came home from work exhausted and found her in our bedroom going through my dresser drawers. She said she was looking for a phone charger. I knew she was lying. I could see it in her face, the same look she'd had when I was a kid and she'd taken money from my birthday cards to buy cigarettes. I checked my jewelry box later that night. The necklace my grandmother had left me was gone. A pair of earrings Daniel had given me for Christmas. Gone. I felt sick. I confronted her the next morning. She denied it. She said I was paranoid, that I'd probably just misplaced them, that I was being dramatic. She said it was hurtful that I'd accuse her of something like that she couldn't believe I thought so little of her. But I knew. I installed a lock on our bedroom door that weekend. She pouted for 3 days. Then she stole my debit card. I noticed when I checked my bank account and saw $400 in charges I didn't recognize. Gas stations. Fast food. A liquor store. I checked my wallet. My card was back in its slot, perfectly placed, like it had never been gone. I felt something inside me shut down. Not break. Not crack. Just shut down. Like a door closing and locking from the inside. I printed out the bank statements. I took screenshots. I made copies. And then I sat her down and told her she had 1 week to leave. She exploded. She screamed that I was a terrible daughter, that I was abandoning her just like everyone else, that I'd regret this. She called me selfish, ungrateful, cold. She said she should have left me in foster care when my dad died, that she should have known I'd turn out like this. I didn't cry. I didn't yell back. I just said, "You have 1 week." She left in 5 days. Didn't say goodbye. Just took her stuff while I was at work and left the key on the counter. For a few weeks, I felt guilty. I felt like maybe I'd been too harsh, too cold. Daniel held me while I cried and reminded me of everything she'd done, everything she'd taken. Then I got a call from a collections agency. My mother had opened a credit card in my name, maxed it out, never paid a bill. $17,000 in debt that I didn't even know existed. I filed a police report. I froze my credit. I spent months fighting with banks and credit agencies, proving the fraud, trying to clear my name. My credit score tanked. We had to postpone the wedding because we couldn't afford it anymore. I had panic attacks every time my phone rang. And my mother? She sent me a text that said, "I can't believe you'd call the police on your own mother. You're dead to me." I didn't respond. I spent the next 3 years rebuilding my credit, my savings, my sense of self. I went to therapy. I learned what narcissism was, what financial abuse looked like, what it meant to be conditioned by someone who is supposed to protect you. I learned that love isn't supposed to cost everything. I learned that being a good daughter didn't mean lighting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. Daniel and I got married in a small ceremony with 20 people. It was perfect. My mother wasn't invited. She sent a Facebook message calling me heartless. I blocked her. I started a new job with better pay. We bought a small house. We adopted a dog. I built a life that felt safe and stable and mine. I stopped checking my phone with dread. I stopped expecting disaster around every corner. And then, 3 years after that last text, my phone rang with her number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was different. Older. Tired. She said she was sick. She said she needed help. She said she was sorry. She said she had no one else. I deleted it. She called again the next day. And the day after that. She sent emails. She sent Facebook messages from a new account I hadn't blocked yet. She found my work email somehow and sent a message there. Every single one said the same thing. She was sick. She needed me. She was my mother. I was all she had. I ignored all of it. For 2 weeks, I ignored every call, every message, every attempt. Daniel asked if I was okay. I said I was. And I was. Because I'd already grieved this relationship. I'd already buried it and moved on. But she didn't stop. The messages got more desperate. More manipulative. She said she was dying. She said she had cancer. She said she'd be homeless without my help. She said I was the reason she was suffering, that if I just helped her one more time, she'd never ask again. I knew it was a lie. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe she really was sick. But I also knew it didn't matter. Because even if it was true, even if she was dying, she'd proven over and over that she would take everything from me and call it love. She'd proven that she saw me as a resource, not a daughter. She'd proven that no amount of help would ever be enough. Still, part of me felt guilty. Part of me wondered if I was being cruel, if I was doing to her what she'd done to me. Part of me thought maybe I should at least hear her out. Then I remembered the credit card fraud. The stolen jewelry. The $22,000. The way she'd called me heartless for setting a boundary. The way she'd left me at 17 and never looked back until she needed something. I called my lawyer. I asked what my options were if she kept harassing me. He told me I could send a cease and desist letter, that if she continued after that, I could pursue a restraining order. I had him draft the letter that day. It was formal and cold and said exactly what it needed to say.
Do not contact me.
Do not come to my home or workplace. Any further attempts at communication will be considered harassment and will be reported to the authorities. I had it sent certified mail, so I'd know she received it. She got it on a Thursday. By Friday, I had 7 missed calls. On Saturday, she showed up at my house. I saw her through the window. She looked older, thinner, tired. She was standing on my porch, crying, holding a crumpled tissue. Part of me wanted to open the door. The same stupid part that had believed her at 21, that had sent her money at 23, that had let her move in at 29. But I didn't. I called the police instead. They came within 15 minutes. They asked her to leave. She sobbed and told them I was her daughter, that she just wanted to talk, that I was being unreasonable. They told her she needed to go, or they'd arrest her for trespassing. She left, but not before screaming that I was heartless, that I'd regret this, that I was a terrible person. I watched from behind the curtain as she got in her car and drove away. And I felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Nothing. Just relief. The calls and messages stopped after that. For 6 months, silence. I started to think maybe it was finally over. Then I got a call from a hospital 3 states away. A nurse told me my mother had been admitted 2 weeks ago. She'd listed me as her emergency contact. She had stage 4 liver cancer. She was asking for me. The nurse said she didn't have long, maybe a few weeks, maybe less. She said my mother was scared and alone. She asked if I could come. I said no. The nurse seemed surprised. She said, "She's your mother." I said, "I'm aware." She said, "She's dying." I said, "I understand." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I'll let her know you can't make it." I said, "Thank you," and hung up. Daniel looked at me from across the room. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Are you sure?" he asked. I said, "I'm sure." Because I was. I'd spent years being manipulated by guilt, by the idea that blood meant obligation, by the belief that being a good daughter meant sacrificing myself over and over. I'd learned the hard way that some people will take everything you give and still ask for more. I'd learned that you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed, that you can't love someone into being the parent they should have been. I'd also learned that protecting myself wasn't cruelty. It was survival. The nurse called back 3 days later. She said my mother had passed away that morning. She said she'd been asking for me until the end. She said it in a way that felt like judgment, like I should feel guilty, like I'd done something wrong. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel much of anything. Just a quiet, settled sense of closure. A week later, I got a call from a lawyer handling her estate. He said she'd left everything to me. I almost laughed. She had nothing. $600 in a checking account and $12,000 in medical debt. He asked if I wanted to claim the $600. I said no. He asked if I'd be paying the medical debt. I said absolutely not. He seemed confused. He said, "She was your mother." I said, "She made her choices. I made mine." I hung up and blocked the number. That night, Daniel and I sat on our back porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset. He asked me how I felt. I told him I felt free. He asked if I had any regrets. I thought about it for a long time. "No," I said. "I don't. Because I'd tried. I tried when I was 21 and desperate for connection. I tried when I was 23 and thought money could build a bridge. I tried when I was 29 and let her into my home. I tried and tried and tried, and it was never enough. Because she didn't want a daughter. She wanted someone to use. And I'd finally learned that I deserved more than that. I think about her sometimes. I wonder if she ever really understood what she did to me. I wonder if she ever felt genuine remorse or if every apology was just another manipulation. I wonder if she died scared and alone, and if that was her own doing, or if I could have made it different. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. Because I built a life without her. A good life. A life where I'm not constantly waiting for the next crisis, the next demand, the next emotional landmine. A life where I'm allowed to be happy without guilt. A life where I matter. It took me years to realize that the woman who gave birth to me and the woman who abandoned me were the same person. It took even longer to realize that I didn't owe her anything just because we shared DNA. And it took the longest to realize that choosing myself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. So here's my question for you if you've made it this far. If someone in your life, even someone who's supposed to love you, keeps taking and never giving back, if they only call when they need something, if they make you feel guilty for having boundaries, if they've hurt you over and then act like you're the problem for remembering, at what point do you walk away? At what point do you decide that your peace matters more than their expectations? At what point do you choose yourself? Because I did. And I've never been happier.